The air in the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room hung heavy with tension, thick as fog rolling off the Potomac. Senator Adam Schiff's voice boomed like a thunderclap, his finger jabbing accusingly at the witness table. "You sit here today, Director Patel, as the leader of an FBI that has lost the trust of millions of Americans. And until the Bureau confronts its own failures, its own bias." FBI Director Cash Patel's voice sliced through the chamber like a gunshot. Cold, flat, deadly. The room went silent in an instant. Schiff froze mid-gesture, his words hanging unfinished. "Senator Schiff, stop." "Before you finish that sentence," Patel continued, his voice quiet but edged with steel that made reporters lean forward, pens poised. The sound of a thick folder hitting the table echoed. Heavy. Deliberate. "You're lecturing me about truth? About bias? About accountability?" Patel's voice hardened. "But the American people watching this need to know something about you first." Schiff's voice sharpened with alarm. "Director, I'm asking the questions." "No, Senator," Patel's words cracked like a whip. "Not today. Today, I have questions for you." Gasps rippled through the gallery. This wasn't how hearings worked. The witness doesn't interrogate the senator. But Patel's voice pressed on, relentless. "For 2 years, you went on television claiming you'd seen evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. Over 100 TV appearances. Direct evidence, you said. More than circumstantial, you said. I have seen it, you said." Papers rustled as Patel opened his folder. Mueller found nothing. Durham found nothing. The entire intelligence community had nothing. But you claimed to have evidence. His voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "So here's my question, Senator. Right now, before we discuss the FBI's credibility, let's discuss yours." The chamber erupted, voices shouting. Chairman Graham's gavel banging frantically. Through the chaos, Patel's voice rang out. "What evidence did you see, Senator Schiff? Name it right now. What evidence?" Silence. Sudden. Complete. In that silence, Adam Schiff's heavy breathing into his microphone was the only sound in the room. "That's what I thought," Patel said quietly. "No evidence. There never was. And you knew it." His voice rose, sharp and prosecutorial. "Because I was there, Senator. I was Devin Nunes's chief investigator. I had the same classified access you did. I read the same intelligence, and there was nothing there." Patel's tone turned savage. "You didn't just lie to America. You lied while knowing that people like me, people who'd read the same documents, knew you were lying. You weaponized your security clearance. You suppressed evidence. You promoted Russian disinformation. And you destroyed lives doing it." The sound of Patel standing up filled the room. "So before you lecture the FBI about accountability, Senator, let's talk about the house of lies you built. Let's discuss your censure, your suppressed transcripts, your promotion of the fake Steele Dossier." His voice cracked like thunder. "Let's talk about how you spent 6 years lying to America, while I spent 6 years documenting every false word you said. And now I'm FBI director, with access to everything, and you're sitting in front of me, and the truth is finally coming out." Absolute chaos in the chamber now. Shouting, Graham's gavel pounding uselessly. But cutting through it all, Patel's final words. "Class is in session, Senator Schiff. And today's lesson is about what happens when a liar finally faces the evidence." Patel's voice cut through the chamber like a knife through silk, quiet, controlled, but carrying an edge that made several senators look up sharply from their notes. Schiff stopped mid-sentence, clearly not expecting the interruption. "Before you continue lecturing the FBI about truth, political bias, and accountability," Patel said, his voice still quiet but harder now, "I'd like to address something directly relevant to this committee's oversight responsibilities. You came here today to question the FBI's credibility, Senator Schiff. So let's discuss your credibility. Let's discuss the house of lies you built. And let's examine what happens when someone who spent years lying about having evidence finally has to face the evidence against him." Another pause. You could hear people breathing. Graham's voice, barely suppressing excitement. "Director Patel, you have the floor. Proceed." The sound of Patel opening his prepared materials echoed in the chamber. "Mr. Chairman, thank you. What I'm about to present will take some time, but I believe the American people deserve to hear it. All of it. Every lie, every suppressed document, every false claim Senator Schiff made while abusing his position as Intelligence Committee Chairman." Schiff's voice strained. "This is outrageous." "No, Senator," Patel shot back. "What's outrageous is that you lied to America for years, got censured by your own House colleagues, and still haven't apologized. That's outrageous. What I'm doing is simply presenting the truth. Finally." The room fell silent again, waiting. "Let's start," Patel said, his voice taking on a prosecutor's rhythm, "with what you told the American people. Your own words, your sworn statements, your media appearances, all documented, all recorded." The House of Lies was about to collapse, and Cash Patel, the investigator Schiff had spent years trying to discredit, was bringing the hammer. "March 20th, 2017, Patel began, his voice clear and measured. NBC's Meet the Press. Chuck Todd interviewing then-Representative Adam Schiff. Let me read you the exact exchange from the transcript." The room was silent except for the rustle of paper. Todd asks, "You have seen evidence of collusion," and Senator Schiff responds, and I quote, "I don't want to go into specifics, but I will say that there is evidence that is not circumstantial, and it's very much worthy of investigation." End quote. Patel paused, letting that sink in. "Evidence that is not circumstantial. Those were your words, Senator Schiff. March 20th, 2017. But we're just getting started." More papers rustling. 2 days later, March 22nd, 2017. CNN with Jake Tapper. Again, direct quote from the transcript. "I can say that there is more than circumstantial evidence now that the Russians had help from people in the Trump campaign in their effort to interfere in our election." End quote. Patel's voice hardened slightly. Then, April 2nd, 2017. Face the Nation. Schiff says, and again, I quote, "I was surprised to see the Director Comey say that, because I don't think that's accurate. I have seen evidence of collusion." End quote. He paused again. When he spoke next, his voice was colder. "Over the next 2 years, Senator Schiff appeared on television and radio more than 100 times, making similar claims. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, PBS, NPR, over and over, I've seen evidence. More than circumstantial. Direct evidence. Clear evidence of collusion." Patel's voice rose slightly, building intensity. "And people believed you, Senator, because you were the ranking member, then chairman, of the House Intelligence Committee. You had access to the nation's most sensitive secrets, access that 99% of Americans don't have. When you said you'd seen evidence, people trusted that you were telling the truth." A beat of silence. Then Patel continued, his voice dripping with contempt. "But here's what's interesting. On March 24th, 2019, Special Counsel Robert Mueller submitted his report. 448 pages. The conclusion from Volume 1, page 2, reads as follows. Patel read slowly, emphasizing each word. The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. Did not establish. That's legal language, meaning they found no evidence sufficient to prove the allegation. Patel's voice turned sharper. Despite 2,800 subpoenas, 500 witnesses, 500 search warrants, 2 years of investigation, $32 million spent, Mueller found no collusion, no conspiracy, no coordination. Silence in the chamber. Then Patel continued. But perhaps even more devastating is Special Counsel John Durham's report, released May 15, 2023. Durham spent 4 years investigating the origins of the Russia investigation, reviewed over 6 million pages of documents, conducted 480 interviews. Patel's voice grew stronger. And here's what Durham concluded. I'm reading directly from his report. Neither U.S. law enforcement nor the intelligence community appears to have possessed any actual evidence of collusion in their holdings at the commencement of Crossfire Hurricane. End quote. He let that hang in the air for a long moment before continuing, his voice now prosecutorial. Let me translate that for everyone listening. When the FBI started investigating Trump-Russia collusion in July 2016, there was no evidence. None. Not circumstantial. Not direct. Nothing. Patel's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. And you, Senator Schiff, as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, had access to all of that information. Every classified briefing, every piece of intelligence, every witness interview. You knew, or should have known, that there was no evidence. He paused, then delivered the kill shot, his voice quiet but lethal. So here's my question, Senator Schiff, and I want you to answer clearly because the American people are listening. You claimed for 2 years that you had seen evidence of collusion. Mueller couldn't find it. Durham couldn't find it. The entire intelligence community didn't have it. Where did you see it? The chamber was absolutely silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Patel pressed on, relentless. What evidence did you have that the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the special counsel, and 4 years of investigation all missed? What did you see that nobody else could find? More silence, then rustling. Schiff shifting in his seat. Schiff's voice, defensive. Director, this is a gross mischaracterization of my statements. I just read your statements, Senator. Patel's voice cracked like a whip. Your exact words from recorded interviews, from sworn testimony. Are you saying the transcripts are wrong? Are you claiming you didn't say those things? Schiff's voice rising. Context matters. Then provide the context, Patel shot back. What evidence did you see? Specifically, name one piece, just one. One piece of direct evidence of Trump-Russia collusion that you saw as Intelligence Committee chairman. Silence. The kind of silence that screams guilt. Schiff's voice stammering slightly. The investigation documented contacts between the campaign and Russian officials. Contacts are not collusion, Senator. Patel's voice was ice. Contacts are not conspiracy. Contacts are not coordination. Mueller found contacts. He also found no criminal conduct, no agreement to work together, no collusion. Papers rustling again as Patel prepared his next attack. But let's get more specific, shall we? Let's talk about what you knew versus what you said, because that's where your house of lies really starts to crumble. A pause. You could feel the tension building. Let's discuss the 53 witness transcripts, the ones you kept secret for 3 years, the ones that prove you were lying. Gasps echoed through the gallery. Senator Josh Hawley's voice cut in. Mr. Chairman, point of inquiry. Is Director Patel referring to the classified transcripts that were eventually declassified in May 2020? Graham's voice. That's correct, Senator Hawley. Hawley again. The transcripts Senator Schiff fought to keep hidden, even after they were cleared for release? The very same, Patel answered, satisfaction evident in his tone. More gasps, whispered conversations breaking out. Patel's voice rose above the noise. Senator Schiff, this is where it gets really interesting, because these transcripts show what you knew versus what you told America, and the difference is devastating. The chamber fell silent again, waiting for the next blow, and Cash Patel was just getting started. The sound of papers being organized filled the brief silence. Then Patel's voice, measured and deadly. May 7, 2020. Acting Director of National Intelligence Richard Grenell sends a letter to Senator Schiff. Let me read a key passage from that letter. Patel read, his voice formal. Since we last corresponded on this important matter, the ODNI has now completed the review and declassification of the transcripts. Accordingly, the ODNI is returning to the committee all 53 transcripts, as well as your proposed redactions and my approval of those redactions. The committee may now proceed with publication of these transcripts. Patel's voice sharpened. 53 transcripts. Witness interviews conducted by the House Intelligence Committee between December 2017 and May 2018. Every witness testified under oath in classified settings about Russian interference and possible Trump campaign coordination. A pause for emphasis. And you, Senator Schiff, as chairman, had the authority to release these transcripts to the public. They sat in your committee for nearly 3 years before being released, and only after acting DNI Grenell threatened to release them himself if you didn't. Patel's voice turned colder. Why did you keep them secret for so long, Senator? Let me show the American people exactly what they contained, what you didn't want them to see. Papers rustling, then Patel began reading testimony excerpts, his voice taking on different tones for different speakers. James Clapper, former Director of National Intelligence, testifying July 17, 2017. Question: did you ever see evidence of collusion, coordination, or conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia? Clapper's answer: I never saw any direct empirical evidence that the Trump campaign or someone in it was plotting or conspiring with the Russians to meddle with the election. Patel let that statement hang for a moment, then continued with brutal efficiency. Loretta Lynch, former Attorney General, testifying October 20, 2017. Question: do you have evidence of collusion, coordination, or conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russian officials? Lynch's answer: I don't recall anything being briefed to me about that. Another pause. Susan Rice, former National Security Advisor, testifying September 8, 2017. Question: evidence of collusion, coordination, or conspiracy? Rice's answer: I don't recall intelligence that I would consider evidence of such. Patel's voice grew stronger, building momentum. Samantha Power, former UN ambassador, same answer, no evidence. John Brennan, former CIA director, no evidence. Sally Yates, former Deputy Attorney General, no evidence. He paused, letting the pattern sink in. 53 witnesses, Senator Schiff. Senior Obama administration officials, intelligence community leaders, FBI officials, campaign staff. All testified under oath, and over they said the same thing. No evidence of collusion. Patel's voice dropped to a menacing quiet. Now here's what makes this absolutely damning. James Clapper testified on July 17, 2017, that he saw no evidence. You heard that testimony, Senator Schiff. You were in the room. You asked the questions. A pause. When Patel spoke again, his voice was hard as steel. And the very next day, July 18th, 2017, you went on CNN and told Jake Tapper, and I quote, "I have seen evidence of collusion." End quote. The chamber erupted, voices shouting, chairs scraping, Graham's gavel banging frantically, Graham's voice barely audible over the chaos. "Order! The committee will come to order." As the room quieted, Patel continued, relentless. Loretta Lynch testified on October 20th, 2017. No evidence. 10 days later, you appeared on Meet the Press, claiming clear evidence of collusion. His voice rose with barely controlled anger. The last witness testified in March 2018. By that point, you had heard 53 witnesses under oath say there was no evidence. You knew what they said. You were in the room. You heard the testimony. Patel's voice cracked like a gunshot. And what did you do? For the next year, you made 40 television appearances, claiming you'd seen evidence that 53 witnesses swore under oath didn't exist, evidence you had just heard them say they'd never seen. The sound of Patel standing up echoed through the microphones. You kept these transcripts secret for 3 years. You fought their release. You claimed national security concerns. But the real reason you didn't want them released is simple. They proved you were lying. Schiff's voice shaking with anger. That is a gross distortion of complex intelligence assessments. Senator Ted Cruz's voice cut in, sharp and aggressive. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask the witness, Senator Schiff, a direct question. Graham. Senator Cruz is recognized. Cruz's voice dripping with contempt. Senator Schiff, Director Patel just stated that you heard testimony in 2017 from James Clapper saying there was no evidence of collusion. Is that characterization accurate? Did Clapper testify that he saw no evidence? Simple yes or no. Silence. You could hear Schiff breathing into his microphone. Schiff's voice carefully controlled. Senator Cruz, those transcripts need to be read in full context. Yes or no, Senator? Cruz interrupted. Did James Clapper testify under oath that he saw no direct empirical evidence of collusion? More silence. Then whispered conversation. Schiff's lawyer speaking urgently in his ear. Schiff's voice tight. The transcripts are public record. People can read them themselves. They have read them, Cruz shot back, voice rising. And they show exactly what Director Patel said. No evidence. Which means you lied to the American people for 2 years while sitting on transcripts that proved you were lying. The room exploded again. Shouting. Arguments breaking out between senators. Through the chaos, Patel's voice rang out, amplified by his proximity to the microphone. But the transcripts are only part of the story, Senator Schiff. Let's talk about what else you promoted while knowing it was false. Let's discuss your love affair with the Steele Dossier. A collective gasp. Everyone in Washington knew that name, the discredited document that had launched 1,000 conspiracy theories. Patel's voice, cold and prosecutorial. Let's talk about how you read Russian disinformation into the congressional record and called it intelligence. Papers shuffling, then Patel's voice reading from an official document. Congressional Record, March 20th, 2017. Opening statement by Representative Adam Schiff at a House Intelligence Committee hearing. I'm reading from the official transcript. Patel's voice took on a theatrical tone. You cited Steele's claims about Michael Cohen traveling to Prague, about Carter Page's supposed meetings with Russian officials, about a well-developed conspiracy of cooperation between the campaign and Russia. You gave these allegations the weight of congressional authority by reading them into the official record. His voice hardened. There was just one problem. They were false. All of them. Every single allegation. More papers rustling. Here's what Special Counsel Durham found about your precious Steele Dossier. I'm reading directly from his report. The Steele Dossier, which played a central and essential role in the FBI's investigative decisions, was based on raw, unanalyzed, and uncorroborated intelligence. The FBI never corroborated any of the dossier's substantive allegations regarding Trump campaign personnel. He continued reading. Russian intelligence officers could have fed disinformation to the very people who were cited in Steele's reports. Patel's voice rose sharply. Let me say that again, Senator. Russian intelligence may have fed you disinformation, and you read it into the congressional record as if it were verified intelligence. You promoted Russian propaganda while claiming to protect America from Russian influence. The irony hung in the air like smoke. Patel pressed on. But it gets worse. Let me tell you what Inspector General Michael Horowitz found when he investigated the FBI's use of that dossier. December 2019. The IG report documents 17 significant errors the FBI made in FISA applications. His voice ticked off each point like a prosecutor's indictment. The FBI concealed exculpatory information from the FISA court. The FBI relied on the Steele dossier as central and essential evidence, despite knowing it was unverified. An FBI lawyer named Kevin Kleinsmith literally fabricated evidence by altering a CIA email to make Carter Page look suspicious. Patel's voice turned savage. Kleinsmith pleaded guilty, Senator. He admitted he falsified evidence. That's not a Republican talking point. That's a convicted federal crime. A pause, then Patel delivered another blow. And when FBI agents interviewed Steele's primary source, the person who supposedly provided all this explosive information, you know what that source said? He disavowed the key claims, said Steele mischaracterized his information, said much of it was bar talk and speculation, never meant to be presented as verified intelligence. The sound of a document being placed down forcefully on a table. The dossier was garbage, Senator Schiff. Russian disinformation. Uncorroborated rumors. Bar talk elevated to the level of intelligence. And you promoted it. You read it into the congressional record. You cited it on television as credible. Schiff's voice, defensive. The FBI had opened a counterintelligence investigation based on legitimate concerns. Based on false concerns, Patel's voice cracked like thunder. Durham documented that the investigation should never have been opened. There was no predicate, no evidence. It was built on lies from the start. Senator John Kennedy's Louisiana drawl cut through the tension. Mr. Chairman, if I might interject for just a moment. Graham, Senator Kennedy is recognized. Kennedy's voice, deceptively folksy, but razor-sharp. Director Patel, you mentioned something I want to make sure I understood correctly. You said the FBI lawyer falsified evidence, altered a CIA email to get a warrant to spy on an American citizen. Is that accurate? Patel's voice clipped. That is correct, Senator Kennedy. Kevin Kleinsmith changed an email from the CIA that said Carter Page was a CIA source to make it say he was not a source. Completely fabricated evidence to deceive the FISA court. Kennedy's voice dripping with mock confusion. And Senator Schiff, you defended this? You wrote a whole memo saying the FBI acted properly? Silence from Schiff's microphone. Kennedy continued, his voice hardening, because, if I'm remembering correctly, and I am, I checked before this hearing. Congressman Devin Nunes released a memo in February 2018 warning about FISA abuse. Warned that the FBI relied too heavily on the unverified Steele dossier. Warned that the FBI misled the FISA court. His voice rose. And you, Senator Schiff, called Nunes a liar. You said his memo was profoundly misleading. You wrote your own counter-memo defending the FBI. You said the FBI acted appropriately. You vouched for the integrity of the FISA process. Kennedy paused for dramatic effect. And then Inspector General Horowitz investigates and finds, let me see, 17 significant errors. FBI fabricating evidence, FBI hiding exculpatory information, FBI misleading the court. In other words, Nunes was right about everything, and you were wrong about everything. The sound of Kennedy leaning back in his chair. So my question is simple, Senator Schiff. Did you know the dossier was unverified when you read it into the congressional record in March 2017? Yes or no? Silence. Long, damning silence. Schiff's voice, carefully measured. Intelligence assessments require context and nuance. That's not a yes or no, Kennedy interrupted, his folksy tone vanishing, replaced by steel. Did you know it was unverified? Did you know the FBI had serious concerns about its reliability? Yes or no? More silence, whispered conversation between Schiff and his lawyer. Schiff's voice, defensive. I'm not going to discuss classified intelligence in an open hearing. Kennedy's voice, sharp as a knife. The IG report is public, Senator. Durham's report is public. The dossier's lack of verification is public. This isn't about classified information. This is about whether you knowingly promoted false information to the American people while claiming it was credible intelligence. No response. Kennedy's voice, quieter, but no less cutting. Let the record show that Senator Schiff declined to answer whether he knew the Steele dossier was unverified when he promoted it. Patel's voice cut back in, picking up the momentum. But Senator Kennedy raises an excellent point. You didn't just promote false information, Senator Schiff. You actively fought anyone who tried to expose the truth. Let's talk about your cover-up. The word cover-up echoed through the chamber like an accusation, and Cash Patel was far from finished. Patel's voice, cold and methodical. December 9th, 2019, Inspector General Horowitz releases his report, documenting 17 FBI errors in the FISA process. Devastating findings about Bureau misconduct. You know what Senator Schiff said? A pause, then Patel's voice dripping with sarcasm. He called it overhyped, said it showed the FBI acted in good faith, defended the very abuses Horowitz had just exposed. Papers rustling. January 2020. Newly declassified documents show the FBI knew the Steele dossier had serious problems. Schiff's response? He demanded that acting DNI Richard Grenell recuse himself from declassification decisions, tried to stop the truth from coming out. Patel's voice rose. March 2020. More testimony emerges showing FBI agents knew Steele's source disavowed key claims. Schiff opposed further declassification, cited national security. National security? He used classification to hide the evidence that would expose his lies. His voice turned savage. May 2020. Grenell finally forces the release of the 53 witness transcripts, the ones Schiff had kept hidden for 3 years. And how does Schiff respond? By accusing Trump of politicizing intelligence. The sound of a hand slamming down on a table, not hard, but emphatic. Do you see the pattern? Every time evidence emerged that contradicted his narrative, he tried to suppress it. Every time the truth started coming out, he attacked the messenger. Every time documents were declassified, he claimed national security concerns. Patel's voice dropped to a menacing quiet. But it wasn't about national security. It was about protecting his own lies. Because if those transcripts came out, if those documents were declassified, if the truth got to the American people, they would see what I saw, what Devin Nunes saw, what every investigator with access to the classified intelligence knew. He paused, building tension. That Adam Schiff was a liar. That he'd spent years claiming to have evidence that didn't exist. That he'd promoted Russian disinformation while claiming to fight Russian interference. That he'd defended FBI abuses while attacking those who exposed them. The room was absolutely silent now. Even the usual background noise had stopped. Patel's voice, quiet but lethal. And the truly remarkable thing, Senator, is that you orchestrated all of this while sitting on the House Intelligence Committee. You had the same access I did when I was Nunes's chief investigator, the same classified briefings, the same witness testimony, the same FISA applications. His voice hardened. I read those documents, Senator. I saw what they said, and there was nothing there. No collusion, no conspiracy, no evidence. Nothing. And I knew that you were reading the same documents and seeing the same nothing. Patel's voice rose with barely controlled fury. But while I was writing the Nunes memo to expose the truth, you were going on television lying about having evidence. While I was trying to get witness transcripts declassified, you were suppressing them. While I was documenting FBI abuses, you were defending them. The sound of Patel standing up again, his voice amplified by his proximity to the microphone. For 6 years, I watched you lie. 6 years of reading the same intelligence you had, and knowing you were deceiving America. 6 years of gathering evidence, documenting your false statements, building the case. His voice dropped to a cold whisper that somehow carried through the entire chamber. And now I'm FBI director, and you're sitting in front of me, and I have every document, every transcript, every piece of evidence. And the American people are finally going to hear the truth. A pause. You could hear people breathing. Let me show them the final piece. The moment your own colleagues in Congress said enough. Let's talk about your censure. Gasps echoed through the gallery. The official House condemnation, one of the most severe rebukes in congressional history. Senator Tom Cotton's voice cut in, sharp and aggressive. Mr. Chairman, before Director Patel continues, I want to make something clear for the record. Senator Schiff was formally censured by the United States House of Representatives. Is that correct, Director? Patel's voice, grim satisfaction evident. That is correct, Senator Cotton. June 21, 2023. House Resolution 521. The vote was 213 to 209. Strictly partisan, but it happened. Only the 25th member of Congress censured in American history. The weight of that statement hung in the air. Cotton again. And what did that censure resolution say? Patel's voice turned formal, reading from an official document. I'm reading from House Resolution 521. Whereas the allegation that President Donald Trump colluded with Russia to interfere in the 2016 presidential election has been revealed as false by numerous in-depth investigations, including the recent report by Special Counsel John Durham. He continued, whereas Representative Adam Schiff, who served as ranking minority member and then chairman of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, occupied positions of extreme trust, affording him access to sensitive intelligence unavailable to most members of Congress. Patel's voice hardened as he read the damning conclusion. Whereas, for years, Representative Schiff abused this trust by alleging he had evidence of collusion that, as is clear from reports by Special Counsel Robert Mueller, Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz, and Special Counsel Durham, never existed. Silence. Then Patel reading the operative clause, his voice ringing with authority. Resolved that the House of Representatives censures and condemns Adam Schiff, representative of California's 30th Congressional District, for conduct that misleads the American people in a way that is not befitting an elected member of the House of Representatives. The sound of paper being set down decisively. Patel's voice, quiet but devastating. Your own colleagues condemned you, Senator. Formally, officially. Put it in the congressional record for all time. Adam Schiff, censured for misleading the American people. A pause. And after that vote, you were required to stand in the well of the House while Speaker Kevin McCarthy read the censure resolution. Let me tell you what happened next, for those who weren't watching. Patel's voice took on a narrative quality. Democrats chanted, "Shame, shame," trying to drown out the speaker. McCarthy read the resolution, though he was interrupted repeatedly. And when it was over, when you'd been formally condemned by Congress, you gave a response. His voice turned cold. You said, and I quote, "To my Republican colleagues who introduced this resolution, I thank you. You honor me with your enmity. You flatter me with this falsehood." End quote. Patel's voice rose sharply. You called it a falsehood, even after being formally censured, even after Mueller found no collusion, even after Durham documented no evidence, even after Horowitz exposed the FBI abuses. You defended yourself. You still claimed you were being persecuted with falsehoods. The sound of papers being stacked deliberately. Senator Schiff, the Mueller report is not a falsehood. The Durham report is not a falsehood. The Horowitz findings are not falsehoods. The 53 witness transcripts are not falsehoods. The House censure resolution is not a falsehood. Patel's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The only falsehoods in this story are the ones you told for years on television under oath to the American people. A long, devastating silence. Then Patel's voice, building to his final assault. And the cost of those lies was enormous. Let me show you exactly what your deception cost this country. Patel's voice, cold and clinical. Special Counsel Mueller's investigation, 2 years. $32 million in taxpayer money. 2,800 subpoenas. 500 witnesses. 500 search warrants. 230 orders for communication records. Nearly 500,000 documents reviewed. A pause for emphasis. Result, no collusion. His voice hardened. Special Counsel Durham's investigation, 4 years, $6.5 million in taxpayer money, 480 interviews, 6 million pages of documents reviewed. Another pause. Result, no basis for FBI investigation, no evidence of collusion. Patel's voice rose. Total cost, $38.5 million spent investigating a conspiracy theory that you promoted, while knowing there was no evidence. The enormity of that number hung in the air. But the financial cost is nothing compared to the human cost. Patel's voice softened slightly, taking on a more reflective tone. Families torn apart by political division over your Russia conspiracy theories. Thanksgiving dinners ruined. Friendships destroyed. Americans who believed your lies for years, who trusted you because you were the Intelligence Committee chairman, who thought surely you wouldn't lie about something so serious. His voice grew stronger. People who watched you on television claiming you'd seen evidence, who believed the Trump campaign had betrayed America to Russia, who thought their own government was covering it up. Patel's voice turned angry. The conspiracy theories your lies spawned, the distrust your deception created. He paused, then delivered a devastating blow. Trust in the FBI dropped to historic lows, not because of actual FBI misconduct, though there was some, but because you spent years claiming the FBI had evidence of collusion, creating expectations that could never be met. You damaged the Bureau's credibility while claiming to defend it. Senator Lindsey Graham's voice cut in. Director Patel, and I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Are you testifying that Senator Schiff's false claims about having evidence harmed the FBI's reputation? Patel's voice, firm and clear. Yes, Mr. Chairman. For years, he told America that the FBI had evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. He implied that classified intelligence proved it. He suggested the investigation would reveal crimes. And when Mueller found nothing, when Durham showed the investigation should never have been opened, millions of Americans concluded the FBI must have covered it up. His voice rose. But it wasn't the FBI that lied, Mr. Chairman. It was him. It was Adam Schiff. He abused his position. He weaponized his security clearance. He created false expectations. And when reality didn't match his lies, people blamed us. Graham's voice, grim. Thank you, Director. Please continue. Patel took a breath, then pressed on. And then, with breathtaking audacity, Senator Schiff came before this committee today to lecture the FBI about credibility, about political bias, about accountability. His voice turned withering. The same man who lied over 100 times on television, who suppressed exculpatory evidence for 3 years, who defended FBI misconduct when it suited his narrative, who was censured by his own House colleagues, who still, to this day, refuses to admit he was wrong. The sound of Patel picking up his final document. Let me read you something Special Counsel Durham wrote in his report, something I think captures this perfectly. Patel read, his voice heavy with meaning. The FBI and Justice Department failed to uphold their important mission of strict fidelity to the law in connection with certain events in the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. He looked up. You could hear the shift in his posture through the microphone. Durham was right. The FBI made serious mistakes. We've acknowledged them. We've implemented reforms. We've held people accountable. We've fired officials. We've changed procedures. Because when you make mistakes, you admit them and fix them. Patel's voice grew hard. But there's another entity that failed to uphold fidelity to the law. Failed to uphold fidelity to the truth. And that's you, Senator Schiff. His voice rose to a crescendo. You had a duty as Intelligence Committee Chairman to be truthful with the American people. You had access to the most sensitive intelligence in the country. You knew what the evidence showed and what it didn't show. A pause, then quietly but with devastating force, and you lied anyway. The chamber was absolutely silent. Patel's voice, building intensity. You spent years building what I call the House of Lies, a structure built on false claims about having evidence, supported by suppressed transcripts that contradicted your narrative, defended by attacks on anyone who challenged you. Investigators like me, like Devin Nunes, like John Durham, maintained by constant media appearances where you implied you knew secrets you couldn't share. His voice rose sharply. But you didn't know secrets. You knew the opposite of what you were saying. You knew there was no evidence, and you went on television and lied about it anyway. The sound of Patel standing, his voice now amplified, powerful, prosecutorial. You came here today to question the FBI's integrity, our fidelity to truth, our commitment to facts over politics. But the American people can now see clearly who has integrity and who doesn't, who tells the truth and who lies. who follows the evidence and who fabricates it. A long pause. The tension in the room was suffocating. Then Patel's voice, quiet, but carrying to every corner of the chamber. So let me ask you one final time, Senator Schiff, and I want you to answer clearly for the record, so the American people can judge for themselves. Another pause. Building. Do you have any evidence, any at all, of criminal collusion, conspiracy, or coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia to interfere in the 2016 election? Silence. Complete silence. Patel's voice harder. Any direct evidence? Any circumstantial evidence? Any evidence whatsoever that you saw in your capacity as Intelligence Committee Chairman? More silence. Because if you do, Senator, you should present it now. Mueller couldn't find it after 2 years. Durham couldn't find it after 4 years. But if you have it, America deserves to know. So present it right now. What evidence did you see? The silence stretched on. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15. Then Schiff's voice, tight with barely controlled rage. Director, you are making a mockery of this hearing. Answer the question, Senator. Patel's voice cracked like a whip. Do you have evidence? Yes or no? Schiff's voice, defensive. The findings of the Mueller investigation clearly documented. The Mueller investigation found no collusion, Patel shouted. Your evidence. Do you have any? Schiff's voice rising. This is a political attack orchestrated to distract. This is a factual question, Patel roared. Evidence, yes or no? Do you have any evidence of Trump-Russia collusion? The sound of urgent whispering. Schiff's lawyer pulling at his sleeve, Schiff trying to shake him off. Schiff's voice stammering. I stand by every statement I made as Intelligence Committee Chairman. That's not an answer, Patel shot back. Evidence, yes or no? More whispering, the sound of papers being shuffled frantically. Then Graham's gavel, 3 sharp cracks. Senator Schiff, as chairman of this committee, I'm directing you to answer the director's question. Do you have evidence of Trump-Russia collusion? Answer yes or no, for the record. A long, agonizing silence. You could hear Schiff breathing into his microphone. Finally, Schiff's voice, barely audible. I cannot discuss classified intelligence in an open hearing. Graham's voice, heavy with significance. That's not an answer. Director Patel has made clear we're not asking about specific classified intelligence. We're asking if you have any evidence of the collusion you claim to have seen for 2 years. Evidence, yes or no? Another silence, longer this time. Schiff's voice tight. No, I cannot provide evidence in this setting. Graham, pressing, cannot or do not have. No response, just the sound of Schiff's breathing. Graham's voice, as heavy as a gavel. Let the record show that Senator Schiff declined to answer whether he has evidence of Trump-Russia collusion, despite claiming for 2 years that he had seen such evidence. Director Patel, thank you for your testimony today. This has been remarkably illuminating. You are dismissed. The sound of Patel gathering his folders, his voice quiet but carrying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad the American people finally got to hear the truth. Footsteps, the sound of Patel walking toward the exit. Behind him, the room erupting, shouting, arguments, chairs scraping, gavels banging. But cutting through it all, you could hear one thing clearly. Adam Schiff's heavy breathing into his microphone. The House of Lies had collapsed, and there was no rebuilding it. 3 months later, the sound of a door closing. Footsteps on a hardwood floor. FBI Director Cash Patel's office at the Hoover Building, the hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of traffic on Pennsylvania Avenue. Another set of footsteps, a chair being pulled out. Deputy Director Paul Abbate's voice, measured and professional. The latest polling shows Schiff's favorables have completely collapsed, down 22 points in his primary. 3 major endorsements rescinded. The California Democratic Party is in chaos about whether to support him. The sound of Patel leaning back in his chair, a satisfied exhale. Patel's voice, grim but pleased. This wasn't just about destroying him politically, but I won't pretend I'm not satisfied to see accountability finally arrive. Abbate's voice, knowing, you've been waiting for this moment since 2018, since you were on the other side, investigating as Nunes's chief investigator while Schiff was lying on TV every night. The sound of Patel standing, walking to the window. His voice reflective. 6 years? 6 years of watching him lie. 6 years of knowing what the classified intelligence actually said. 6 years of seeing him abuse his position while I was gathering evidence that proved he was full of it. A pause, the sound of traffic below. Patel's voice harder now. You know what bothered me most, Paul? I was reading the same intelligence he was. As Nunes's chief investigator, I had the same access Schiff did. I saw the same FISA applications, the same witness testimony, the same FBI reports. His voice rose slightly. And there was nothing there. No collusion, no conspiracy, no evidence, nothing. And then I'd watch him go on CNN and say, I've seen evidence that's more than circumstantial. I'd watch him on MSNBC claiming clear evidence of collusion. And I knew he was lying, because I'd read the same classified documents he had, and they showed the opposite. Abbate's voice, quiet. But you couldn't say anything, because it was classified. Patel's voice, bitter. Exactly. He weaponized classification. He used his security clearance as a shield to lie. He knew most Americans couldn't read the classified intelligence, so he could claim anything. And who could challenge him? He was the Intelligence Committee chairman. The sound of footsteps pacing. People trusted that he wouldn't lie about something so serious. And he exploited that trust, abused it, destroyed it. Abbate's voice. But you knew. Devin Nunes knew. Patel's voice, stronger. We spent years trying to get the truth out. We wrote the Nunes memo documenting the FISA abuse. And what did Schiff do? Called us conspiracy theorists. We're misleading America. Wrote his own counter-memo defending the FBI's abuses. A pause, the sound of papers being picked up. And then Durham's report comes out, Horowitz's report, the transcripts. Everything we said in the Nunes-Vite memo was vindicated. Everything Schiff claimed was exposed as lies. Patel's voice turned cold. We were right about everything. The FISA abuse, the Steele Dossier, the lack of evidence, all of it. But did Schiff apologize? Did he admit he was wrong? The sound of papers being thrown down. No, he doubled down, called the censure a falsehood, claimed he was being persecuted, called Durham's investigation flawed. Abbate's voice, measured. Until today, until you confronted him with his own words. A pause, then Patel's voice, satisfaction evident. I became FBI director for a lot of reasons. Reforming the Bureau, restoring credibility, refocusing on real threats. But I won't lie. One of them was this moment. His voice grew stronger. The chance to finally hold Adam Schiff accountable. Not as a congressional staffer he could dismiss, not as an investigator he could ignore, but as the director of the FBI. The sound of Patel walking back to his desk, sitting down. With all the evidence at my fingertips, all the classified intelligence declassified, all the witness testimony public, and the authority to present it to the American people. A pause, the sound of Patel looking at something on the wall, the FBI motto, perhaps. His voice, quiet but intense. For 6 years, I watched him lie, watched him attack investigators like me who were trying to expose the truth, watched him suppress evidence, watched him abuse his position. Another pause, and I gathered evidence, documented every false statement, built the case, waited for the moment when I'd have the platform and the authority to destroy him with the truth. Abate's voice, almost admiring. And today was that moment. Patel's voice, cold satisfaction. Today was that moment. The truth caught up with him. It always does. You can lie for years. You can use classification as a weapon. You can attack investigators like me who are trying to expose you. His voice dropped to a near whisper. But eventually, you run into someone who knows what you know, who has the same access you have, who remembers every lie you told, and who isn't afraid to destroy you with the truth. The sound of Abate standing to leave, footsteps, the door opening. Abate's voice from the doorway, "Justice has a long memory." Patel's voice, quiet but firm, "Yes, yes, it does." The door closing. Patel alone in his office now, the sound of him leaning back in his chair, a long exhale. Patel's voice to himself, barely above a whisper. 6 years, but worth every day. Justice delayed, but not denied. The sound of traffic outside, the hum of the air conditioning, and in the silence you could almost hear the echo of Schiff's unanswered question. What evidence did you see? The answer, as everyone now knew, none. There never was any evidence. It was all a lie. 6 months later, the sound of a press conference, cameras clicking, reporters murmuring, a statement being read, voice flat and defeated. After much reflection and discussion with my family, I've decided not to seek re-election to the Senate. I'm incredibly proud of what we've accomplished, but I believe I can be most effective fighting for progressive values in a different capacity. Nobody believed it. Internal polling showed him losing his primary by 31 points. Major donors had fled. His colleagues avoided him. Even friendly media had stopped booking him. His political career, which had once seemed destined for the highest levels, ended not with celebration, but with quiet humiliation. He left the Senate, having never answered the most important question of his career. What evidence did you see? Because the answer, as everyone now knew, was simple. None. There never was any evidence. It was all a lie. And the house of lies, once collapsed, could never be rebuilt. Back in the Hoover building, Patel's office, late evening. The sound of him alone, looking out the window at Washington lit up at night. His voice, quiet, reflective. The bayou swallows everything false, leaves only what's true. A pause. Kennedy would appreciate that. The sound of him turning off the lights. Footsteps toward the door. His voice. One last time. Fidelity. Bravery. Integrity. The door closing. Darkness. And somewhere in Washington, politicians of both parties were learning the most important lesson of all. Tell the truth, or face the consequences. Because somewhere in the FBI, A director with the prosecutorial background and a very long memory was watching, and he had receipts.